Welcome to Season 2 of the Soualichi Stories, presented by the Foresee Foundation and funded by UNESCO. The Soualichi Stories series includes tales of our island's beloved legends, history, and folklore, as told by exceptional Sint Maarten storytellers. Foresee Foundation is honored to share these stories as it brings people together and bridges the gap between generations. These stories remind us of our culture, our heritage, our one island. Through these stories, we hope you feel more connected as we strive to keep the art of storytelling alive. Please enjoy this next Soualichi story and all the other stories in our series, and let us know if there's any other particular story you would love to hear in the future. Enjoy! Darren is seated at the dining room table eating Johnny cakes stuffed with corned beef. He slowly chews on the bakes and takes a sip of cold tamarind juice. Darren was at Miss Margaret's running an errand for his mother. He can't visit her without being given something to eat. Darren can't tell Miss Margaret no either, or that he is not hungry. She will always tell him that a growing boy needs to eat in order to get strong. Darren's mother always has him running errands for her. He has to bring this or carry that to one of her friends. Darren's mother would tell him to make sure he backside home before the spit on the ground dries. But he didn't get that rule today. He wonders why his mother made him do an errand on this particular morning. Today, Darren, his brother, and his friends were supposed to ride in the back of Mr. Joe's pickup to cul-de-sac to Mr. Wilson's property, which is filled with all kinds of fruit trees like mango, sugar apple, golden apple, gooseberry, kinip, hog plum, and guava. He would not get the best fruit, even though his brother promised to bring some for him. But Darren is here in his former neighborhood of Middle Region, where he is seen as a traitor because his family moved to another district that is the rival of Middle Region. So Darren is treated as if he committed a crime and is called a backstabber by all the friends he had in the neighborhood. So today, he wants to get in and get out as quick as possible and catch up with his brother and other friends. Darren finishes the last piece of his Johnny cake. He looks up to see Miss Margaret standing in front of him, smiling. He never heard her entering the room, even though her foot them heavy, and she is carrying a large paper bag. Miss Margaret's smile is contagious to anyone in the room, and her smile softens the deep wrinkles on her face as she puts the bag on the table.
"This is for your mother,"
Miss Margaret tells Darren as she pushes the bag in his direction.
"And here's a piece of mint for her to plant,"
she tells Darren as she hands it to him. Darren is not paying attention to Miss Margaret, as he is worried about the teasing that he would have to endure from the children he knew and grew up with the moment he would step out of this house. Miss Margaret buries her hand in the bag and takes out another bag. This one is a leather bag and looks like it's filled with something.
"And this is for you, sonny boy,"
Miss Margaret tells Darren with a wink. Darren takes the bag and shakes it. He listens to the clicking and clacking sounds that come from it. Darren opens the leather bag and his eyes widen when he sees that it's a set of shiny marbles. "I made this bag for you and filled it with some marbles my son left behind. He married now and say he don't have time for these childish things anymore," Miss Margaret tells Darren. Darren takes a marble out of the bag and holds it up to the light and admires how it reflects from it. Darren then turns his attention to Miss Margaret. "Thanks," Darren tells her as he embraces her with a tight hug. "Thanks who?" Miss Margaret scolded. "Thanks, Miss Margaret," Darren responds shakily. "You're such a good boy with manners and you're doing well in school too," Miss Margaret says as she rubs a hand on Darren's head. "You deserve them. Now run along before your mother starts to worry." Darren puts his favorite baseball cap on his head and makes his way out of Miss Margaret's home, clutching the paper bag with the mint plant in one hand and the leather bag with marbles in the other. Darren leaves the house in a hurry. He hops off the porch and out of the yard as fast as his legs could carry him. Darren's thought is to get home as soon as possible so he could test out his new gift. He ain't even worrying again about his brother and Mr. Wilson fruit trees. In his haste, Darren trips and falls on the side of the road. The leather bag flies from his hand and crashes onto the ground. The marbles flew out all over on the asphalt, some in the dirt, and some in some patches of grass. Darren hears a laughter and looks up to see Jason stepping up from behind a large kinnip tree. He had seen everything. "Ha! We had to get the crabs out of Melorigion," Jason says in a mocking tone. "Free marbles! That is what a traitor is good for," Jason says as he stands over Darren. Jason is always in competition with Darren for everything and makes fun of him even though he's just 2 days older. Jason picks up the marbles and the leather bag. "That is mine!" Darren shouts at Jason as he picks himself up. "I just find a bag of marbles and finders keepers, losers weepers," Jason taunts Darren and shoves him back to the ground. Darren struggles to get back to his feet as Jason runs off with his marbles. He manages to find one marble that Jason missed. It was exactly the one that he admired when he got the bag from Miss Margaret. Darren followed Jason as quick as he could, but the pain of his bruised knee slowed him down. Darren paused and stared into the direction that Jason ran to. He knows that he is headed to the flamboyant tree where all the boys go to play marbles. Darren took a deep breath as he knew he would have to face everyone who now labels him as a betrayer. Darren has been to this spot hundreds of times, but this is the first time he will be at the flamboyant tree since he moved out of the neighborhood. He crept closer to the area where only the best marble players get to show off their skills in front of the gathering crowd. Darren lowered his cap in an attempt to hide his face and he squeezed through the gathering. He needed to get his marbles back because they were a gift from Miss Margaret and he has never seen marbles of that color or design. Everyone from the neighborhood was there. This has got to be a special game. Darren climbed onto a large rock and then onto a branch of a tree so he could see over the head of the crowd. Darren sees a chubby boy he has never seen before hit the winning shot on Robert, one of the top players in the neighborhood. The new kid collected all of Robert's marbles. Robert melted into the crowd and hung his head in defeat. "Lord, Tony out here just beating everybody," one of the boys say. "Who next?" Tony, the chubby round boy, said in an accent which shows that he wasn't from this neighborhood or from the island. "I next," Jason shouts as he steps forward with his chest puffed up, filled with pride like a guinea fowl. "Those my marbles," Darren shouts, but his voice can't be heard above the cheering of the crowd and the words of encouragement that they're giving to Jason. The crowd screams Jason's name. "Jason, you need to beat this boy," someone in the crowd shouts, "and show him what Melorigion is made of." Jason proudly walks to the marble ring and opens the bag. The crowd is in awe at the sight of the new marbles that sparkle in the sunlight. "You come back to give me more marbles?" Tony tells Jason with a confident grin. "This time gonna be different," Jason responds. "The last time you barely win," he says as he chooses his spot, gets down on his knees as he prepares to shoot the best game of marbles ever. Jason hits 2 marbles out of the ring with a loud crack on his first try. Then he hits 2 more out of the ring. Jason is smiling from ear to ear. "Don't feel like $1 cause this game will end the same way like last time," Tony tells Jason with a large confident smile on his face. Jason shoots and hits another marble, but it doesn't exit the ring and stops just before the edge of the circle. "This game is mine," Jason tells the crowd, who responds with a cheer. Tony then turns into a marksman and begins to hit all the marbles out of the ring one by one. Tony is on a mission to beat every player in the neighborhood and take away their prized possessions. Darren looks on surprised at how quickly Tony ends the game and wins all the marbles that Jason stole from him. Darren wonders how will he get his marbles back. "That was too easy," Tony boasted and slaps his chest. "Who ready to give me more marbles?" Tony says as he scans the crowd for a new victim. The crowd begins to turn away, scared to even utter a word. Tony wants to win more marbles and humiliate another player. Tony looks up and sees Darren in the tree. "Hey, you boy up there," Tony shouts. "You got some marbles for me? Come down from that tree and face me." Darren climbs down from the tree. He goes to Tony to see if he can retrieve his gift that Miss Margaret gave to him earlier. "The marbles you just win are mine," Darren tells Tony. "That boy you just beat stole them from me." A grin appears on Tony's face. "Oh, these is yours?" Tony shakes the bag filled with the new winnings. "You want them? You have to win them from me." "But this is all I have," Darren says as he shows Tony the lone marble he pulled out from his pocket. Tony's eyes widen at the sight of the marble that sparkled in the light of the sun. He has to have this marble is all that he could think of. After summer vacation, Tony can brag that he went to Sint Maarten and beat the whole village in some marble games. "You're wasting your time playing against him. He plays like a girl," Jason says,
It's a girl who teach him how to play.
Tony hands Darren a handful of marbles that are worn, cracked, and chipped. You'll get 2 free chances. If you miss, you'll lose, Tony tells Darren.
He's a real crab, and that advantage can't help him,
Jason yells. Jason is the only remaining person from the crowd as everyone went on their way. Darren reluctantly follows Tony, who sets up for the game. Darren puts the marbles that Tony lent him in the center of the ring. He closes his eyes and takes a deep breath. He slowly kneels down and sets up a shot. A loud crack is heard and scatters 6 marbles. 3 of them rolled out of the ring. Darren continues the strange technique of shooting the marbles at the edge of the cluster. This is a technique he learned from his cousin Wendy, who usually visited Sint Maarten for vacation, but she didn't come this year. With every shot, Darren shoots more and more marbles out of the ring. Tony stands up and kicks all the remaining marbles, sending them all over the place.
Hey, that's not fair,
Darren says as he gets up and goes face to face with Tony. Tony pushes Darren, who falls backward to the ground. Then he turns his attention to Jason and gives him a furious look. Not fair! Not fair! Tony stammers in anger and points at Jason.
You! Are you two trying to cheat me? Tony shouts. You can't compare me with him,
Jason says and steps back from his angry opponent in fear.
He is not a crabby, you know it.
Tony raises his voice in anger. Jason turns and runs away, leaving Darren to fight Tony alone. Darren gets back to his feet and pushes Tony, who is 2 times the size of him.
I want my marbles back now, Darren barks. Try and take them from me if you're bad, cheater,
Tony says as he puts his hands in a fighting stance. Darren clenches his fist and steps forward. He is only concerned about getting back his gift that was given to him from Miss Margaret. Just as Darren was about to swing, him and Tony are separated by Rene, a 16-year-old boy in the neighborhood. Rene is so tall that he looks older than his age. He holds up both boys by the collar of their shirts.
We settle all problems without fighting.
Rene tightens his grip on Darren, who struggles to get free to fight Tony.
He got my marbles and I want them back,
Darren growls. Rene sees the marbles scattered on the ground and smiles. He lets go of each of the boys and does the secret whistle to call the neighborhood back out.
Let's settle this with a game of marbles the right way. Winner takes all, Rene says.
The crowd returns and gathers around the 2 players. Even Jason is back.
I'll go first this time,
Tony shouts. He sets up his shot. You could see his hand shaking with nervousness. He lets his shot go.
Miss!
The crowd screams with joy. Now it's Darren's turn. He crouches down and remembers the technique that Wendy taught him.
Crack! Crack! Crack!
Darren manages to get all of the marbles out of the ring. The crowd of children go wild and they gather around Darren, giving him high fives and tapping him on the shoulder. They could care less that he wasn't living in Middle Region anymore.
He is one of we,
Jason shouts as he helps Darren collect his winnings. Darren only takes his new shiny marbles from Miss Margaret. These are mine. You can have the rest, Tony. That was a good game. He extended his hand to Tony, who reluctantly shakes it. Darren begins to walk towards home with his marbles, his mother's mint, and a big smile on his face. The end. We hope you enjoyed this inspiring Soualichi story as presented to you by the Foresee Foundation and funded by UNESCO. We hope this story helped all of you feel more connected to the island and to each other. More information on the story and schedule can be found on Foresee's website and Facebook page. We look forward to connecting again with you soon in our next Soualichi story.